Now, if I can go back to Jason and Unruhe in Ontario, I want to ask Jason what he thinks about this warning that was made by President Trump to Russia and Iran against making friends with dictators like Monster Assad, as he called in his words. And he also advised Russia to join civilized nations instead of doing this.
Well, that's probably one of the funniest things that I've ever heard in a long time, if this was not such a serious situation. The United States has backed some of the most ruthless dictatorial regimes that have ever existed in modern history. I mean, this is possibly this is like the biggest hypocritical statement that that one could ever see that the United States has ever made. Some the worst dictators in Latin America who have killed thousands, the Contras in Nicaragua, Augusto Pinochet, all manner of others. I believe the Shah as well. There's some of the absolute worst people that have ever been in a position of leadership. Suharto in Indonesia, and yet they seem to feel that they have some kind of moral ground and can say something against the anti-imperialist alliance of Russia, Iran, Syria, and company. I mean, this is just simply ridiculous. I mean, these countries are trying to help Syria survive an assault by an imperialist aggressor. And for them to say something like that, especially when their accusations are certainly unfounded, and as it appears now that their missile strikes are trying to cover up one of the investigations into these attacks, it's wholly laughable.
And Jason, another big question mark, that comes to everybody's mind is that now that there have been some big military gains on the part of the Syrian army and their allies, like Eastern Ghouta, that was completely recaptured. We had the last only strong point in militant Duma, and then there was this evacuation deal sponsored also by Russia. They started leaving, evacuating their families, terrorists. They gave up their arms. Their leader left. And I mean, how can you justify this? I mean, why should the Assad government launch a chemical weapons attack, even if they have chemical weapons, which evidence shows they don't have?
Well, that that would be the perfect question. It makes no sense whatsoever. Any rational person with any critical thinking skills would realize that such an attack would be meaningless, even if we were to imagine a universe in which Assad really was this kind of a bloodthirsty animal. It would be a horrible waste of resources to do it anyway. It would be an exercise in futility. There's no angle which anyone could come at this where it makes any sense whatsoever. There's just no point to it. It does not benefit the Syrian government in any way, shape, or form. If this fact alone isn't enough to put the nail in the coffin on this claim of the chemical attack, then I don't know what else would. I mean, this is just simply a nonsensical accusation by the imperialist powers, and frankly, it reeks of desperation. This certainly just seems like something that they're like a last stand moment for the propaganda effort against the Syrian government. They've already lost the military situation on the ground through their proxy forces. But one of the things left that they still can do is slander the Syrian government with these kinds of accusations. And the sheer nonsensical nature of the accusation shows largely, well, to me anyway, the desperation on the part of the imperialist forces to try to label the Assad regime as criminal, as without conscience, that just psychotically enjoys harming civilians, when this is when it's just blatantly ridiculous. It really reeks of a last-ditch effort to try to push that kind of narrative before the whole military situation completely comes to an end, and the U.S. has to essentially admit that their proxy war against Syria these past, some 7 years has been a complete and utter failure.